But I just want to say a very warm welcome to the World Vision United webinar for today, 30th of July 2020. I can't believe it's July already. My name is Martin Campbell, I'm the Programme Director, and I'm joined on the call by Helmut Lindell, our Digital Product Owner for World Vision United. Welcome, Helmut, for the second time, hopefully this time with sound. I was just wanting to share very briefly that it's been a big week or a big sprint for the World Vision United team. We've released our very first version of the platform, so version 4.0.0 went out the door about 2.5 weeks ago now, followed relatively rapidly by the very first increment on that. So every sprint, at least, we're producing more features, improving the platform, tweaking things as we go, and that's been the first time that that's actually shipped out of the United team itself and over to our editorial team, who are starting to work on putting the content into the platform ready for distributing that. So that's all been done under lockdown conditions, as your work has been, obviously. We've all been working in pretty difficult conditions over recent months. And so I just wanted to say a huge thank you for the team, done an incredible job to get us where we are today and keep us on schedule for our first cohort of support offices coming onto the platform in Q1 of next year, which of course is now only a few short weeks away. So what that means is later in this webinar, I can give you a little sneak preview of a few of the elements of the World Vision United platform, which are now being used by editors. Obviously, it's kind of empty at the moment. There's content being loaded up, but that's very much at the early stage. We've just been training editors this week. So as we move through that will very much fill out, and you'll see that in a later webinar. I'll cover the full platform. But I did just want to give you a sneak peek as early as possible, and just so you can see the work in progress, really. And keep track of how we're progressing through the project over the coming months through these different webinars that we're catching up on. So we'll get to that a little bit later on, and of course at the end of the webinar we'll have a chance to hear from your questions and to have a little word on the chat. So do, if you're not already logged into YouTube with your Google account, do take a second at some point to log into Google so you can contribute questions in the chat. Love to catch up with any answers that we can provide there. And if you want to catch up with us after, if you're watching this on demand or there's a question that occurs to you later, then do pick up with us sort of directly by getting in touch, and we'll do our best to answer those questions in a later webinar, if not immediately there and then. But before we do any of that, I just want to hand over now to Helmut, who's going to take us through one of the really important tools that you'll have access to pretty shortly, that we're using to manage the United product and the features and changes that we put through that program. So Helmut, over to you.
Well, thanks, Martin. As Martin just mentioned today, I want to show you a tool that we will use to gather ideas and hypotheses from you and from other stakeholders. So in our May webinar, we talked about hypotheses and how we validate them, how we estimate the potential value and the cost of changes. And now the way we will come up with changes will mostly start with our supporters, with the users of the website, right? For the optimization of existing experiences, we will be able to look at live data from the website to figure out where supporters face challenges when they want to complete goals. We can test quickly if changes to the experience will help them or not. When we come up with a totally new feature or a new experience, we might ask supporters even before we start developing something. This might work in digital ways, which are generally more cheaper, or by actually inviting supporters to talk to us offline, which is generally more expensive, so we'll probably do it less often. However, in addition to those user-prompted hypotheses, all of you guys might have ideas or hypotheses on new things or changes to existing things as well. You might wonder, hey, I have this great idea. I have lots of data to support my hypothesis. Have you at World Vision United already considered that? Are you maybe even working on that already? So this is why we have created a product portal, which shows all of the ideas and hypotheses that we and you came up with. We will share the link to this portal in the YouTube comments here, and we will link it on our community hub under worldvisionunited.org as well, so you always have a link to it. And I'm just going to show you what it looks like now. Let me just share my screen. we go. And I hope you will be able to see that. So what you can see here is a dynamic view of all the things, just need to move around my video, of all the things that we could enable supporters to do. You can see multiple cards here, and all of those cards are written from a supporter's point of view. They all include a user story as well. So if we check out this card, for example, we see that a user or a supporter should be able to see pre-filtered categories of children. This is the supporting user story here is: I, as a supporter, want to see only children that match the context of the page I'm on. And then we have a couple of use cases and context to that. So for example, we have an SEO campaign for sponsoring a girl. In that case, if the supporter sees a girl first, or they only see girls, then our expectation is that this matches their expectation, and that our conversion rate might be higher. So that's basically from a supporter's perspective what should happen here. So you as a stakeholder can now do two things on the portal. The first one is for all the existing ideas. You can rate how important this is to you, right? So you can say, this is something that's critical to me, that's something that's very important to me. Once you click this, you can provide some context and maybe add some data that you maybe have gathered in your office. Or you can explain to us why you think this is especially important or unimportant to you. If you add your email address, we can also get back to you to ask more questions or get more data. So this will mean that this will come into our inbox, and we will know what you guys think about a change or a feature, and we will take your feedback into consideration together with the user-centric criteria that we use as well. Now, if you cannot find your idea in the portal, you can also submit a new idea here. Again, you can provide context on how important this idea is. You can provide data that you already have, and you can rate it here. We will take a look at your submission. We will check out all the data you provided to back up your hypothesis, and we will either create a new card based on your idea, or we will merge it with an existing card if we already have one. So now for all the existing cards, you can see 4 different tabs here at the top. So those correspond to the status that the card is currently in. So ideally, all ideas will start in the tab requested, which means that we have seen your idea, or we had an idea on our own that we added here, and we have logged it. And we promise you to take a look at all the ideas that you propose and the data that you bring to back them up. And once we have had a look at the idea, we rate it based on the framework that I walked you through in our May webinar. So feel free to check that out again if you want to know in more detail how that works. And we can check out how likely it is that the underlying hypothesis is valid and how large the value from the change might be. Promising ideas will be scoped, and we will check if our expected value outmatches the expected cost. And ideas that have been scoped will then show up under review here. So for example, something like select children. And they make up our backlog, and we will prioritize that backlog then based on the value and speed of implementation. Ideas that will be available and tested soon will then move to the category announced. So this means we're actively working on them. And once the test results are in and we have in-market data that shows that the idea really triggers the desired supporter behavior change that we want, the feature will be made available across the platform, and the idea will show up under the category launched that you can see here. Now with this product portal, you will always see what's in the pipeline. You will see what we're working on and what has been launched already. Also, you have the opportunity to make your voice heard. You can give feedback on existing ideas here, and you can add new ideas as well. Feel free to visit the portal now at any time, take a look around, and leave your feedback on some of the ideas that are already there, or feel free to suggest new ideas as well. So that's it from my part regarding the product portal, and I'm sure you're already excited on a sneak peek to the first version of our platform, which Martin will show you now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helmut. And I really would encourage everyone just to take a look at that product portal. You will see that, so far it's very much a work in progress, as with all of the work that we're showing you. This is, we're showing you this as we go. This isn't something that's sort of packaged and polished for you. So what I would say is that we are aware that there are a bunch of requirements associated with some of the organization-wide programs that are already happening, like Leapfrog, like the new products that are coming out in terms of the childhood rescue program, those things. So you shouldn't feel that you need to sort of go into those products and feel like you have to tell us about all the details of those. We will be liaising directly with those teams to pick up from them, what the user needs are that they're serving with those products, and making sure that we can deliver all of those through the United platform. But this is about something that maybe you've tested and is working really well locally, or something that you've seen on a competitor's website, something that you've seen in the commercial sector, and think, hey, this is a really good way of achieving an objective, and we kind of have a similar objective here at World Vision. So let's take a look. And as Helmut said, as soon as those ideas start to move out of that first stage, that means that we are actively working on them and testing them in localized markets, and we'll be able to come back to you and share results as we move forward. We are sort of taking the rule that simple is always best from a user's perspective. Having fewer choices kind of means you're much more likely to make any choice at all. So there is always a cost of putting in something to the platform, but many, at the moment it's a very early days for the platform. We've got a long way to go, and so we want to cast the net as broadly as we possibly can and get all of your great ideas coming along our way. So many thanks. Just seeing the question from World Vision France there is no deadline. This is an agile program, so we're not locking and saying you have to have an idea from such and such a date. What will happen is that when an idea gets suggested at any time for any part of the product, as we bring that through the process that Helmut described in our May webinar, which by all means take a look back at that, it'll then get prioritized, and if we say, oh my goodness, that's an amazing idea, we should test that out straight away, then it could be pushed through to the product in a matter of a few weeks. If it's an idea where we're saying, oh, we're not really sure, we need to understand that better, we need to come back to you and understand the data better, then it might take a little bit longer for us to work that through. And then ideas where there's lots of things that we want to do and they're all a similar value, we're going to work through those over a period of time. So it may be a period of time between suggesting something and seeing it come up on the platform, but there isn't any deadline. So at any point where you feel like there's a good idea that we should be aware of, then please do let us know. We want to make this a partnership-wide collaboration and to share the benefits and also the contributions of each of our contributors. So really do value your input right across the board there. So let's move on from that, and we'll come back if there's any questions at the end for sure. But I do just want to spend a moment or two, as I flagged up at the beginning, just giving you a little bit of a sneak preview. So hopefully I'm going to just switch over to my little screen here, and what you can see here is the login for our one of the elements of our system, the content management system, which for the platform you may remember is a system called Umbraco. Now, if I log into this, what you'll see is that there's, as I said before, a lot of work in practice going on. So you're going to see, I just wait for that to come up live. I'm doing this demo live, I should say, so there's going to be all sorts of waiting around and, oh, it's not supposed to do that. And hopefully you won't lose my audio anymore. But what you can see here is basically this is a scratch area at the moment. We've not started to build out the navigation yet. This is all the test pages that our developers, or our editors rather, are working through as they get to learn the system and understand how it works. And you can see that the content management system is kind of keeping track of that. It's letting us see sort of who's doing what. We've got some of the scaffolding in place here, some of the things that are used right across the site. So a taxonomy of tags, which is a way of associating content in a loose way that might be distributed across several different sections of the site. Very common way to link content. an author list to keep track of which authors are contributing, so that we can sort of tie together stories by author if you find a style that you really like to read. Again, a very common method of tagging content. And we've got some more technical things there around, as you can see, screen reader messaging is all about people using screen readers or other sort of ability assistance platforms to help them understand the website if they're not using it as a sort of fully visually sighted and fully hearing enabled person. But if I go into one of the pages and I'll just click into this sort of sample web page, you can see the sorts of things that the platform is enabling. Now, at the moment, we're just putting web pages in. We're not dealing with Twitter or email content here. This is all just web content, so it should be fairly simple. We've got the ability in the platform to really tag custom messaging to make sure that we're getting the best out of things like search engine optimization, things like cross-referencing, and of course, as this message is talking about, analytics, which is our package called StatNav. So it's just sort of reminding editors of different things based on what's in the contents of the page itself. But as we move through, this works like any other content management system. Essentially, there are a number of different widgets that you've got, and each widget does different things, looks a different way, and has different content. So you select which images you're after. You can decide where those clicks send people, which calls to action you're using, and of course set up all the text. And all the text is set up here separately and managed within the content management system in order that it can be automatically translated into all of the different languages that World Vision United supports. And that's something that we have working on the platform, but I'm not going to demo it today because we've just got the one site set up. Once we have a site that's in good shape editorially, then we'll be able to demo that for you at the next webinar. But as you move through the different different widgets, they do different things, different types of sort of calls to action, different types of content, and you can put those together, and we're obviously compiling a directory of those for editors to use to put together the content that they need as they go through. The content management system also sort of prompts you to put in the appropriate information that's used for indexing and for search engine optimization, which is really important to make sure that our sites are located properly by search engines, and that customers across the world, supporters across the world, can find the content that they need. And we've got some links in here, rather than having some fairly complex links to, for example, directly to Google Analytics. And we do need to track all of the content in terms of how it performs in Google Analytics, but we actually use the StatNav package, which we developed for the platform, and which I touched on in an earlier webinar. But essentially what that does is takes all the hard sort of analytics part, all the complex stuff, technical stuff, puts it in StatNav. And I've got a version of StatNav running here, which I can just show you real quick. It won't actually look like this. By the time you see it, it'll look very much like the screens that we just saw. But this is our sort of workhorse for the initial stages of this. But what this does is essentially enables us to set up these packages of marketing content, and describe here in StatNav what kind of content we're talking about. Is it something that's going to stick around, or is it something that will be sort of here today and gone tomorrow? So, you know, a persistent piece of content would be something like a who we are section, whereas a blog post would be something that you'd expect to be transient. And of course, we treat those different analytically, because something that's persistent, we want to measure its performance over a period of time as we change it. Whereas a dynamic piece of content, you don't really have the opportunity to do that. But what we do there is we tag that to a particular stage in the RACE framework of being able to reach, interact with people, convert them to one of our products, and then have them engage with other people. So that RACE framework is something we're going to come back to. It's fully supported in the product. It's part of our organizational platform for analytics. And by setting it up here in StatNav, what it means is that when we come to a piece of content that we're putting together in the content management system, all we need to do is select which package we want to assign the piece of content to, and here we've just got a few there. There's just the placeholders that we've got for our initial setup, but there will obviously be much more when we're live. But the thing is, those packages know which stage of the framework they're at. They know what the goals are for that stage of the framework. So by simply tagging a page to a particular package, it automatically knows what all the goals are that page is supposed to achieve. And so when we go into Google Analytics, we can go in as we do today and look at a very detailed view of every single page and what it does, or we can actually look at this at a more simplistic level and say, okay, I want to see how the blogs are doing. Are they helping us convert? I want to see how these sets of landing pages are doing. Are we getting better conversion from this type of page or that type of page? And it actually means we can do that without needing to be a genius on Google Analytics, which, let's face it, it's not the easiest package in the world to get up and running with. And it does that in full support and full compliance with the organization-wide platform, the Google Analytics platform that we have set up across World Vision internationally. So it will feed in exactly the same goals and measures that we need. So just gives you a little bit more and keeps it a lot simpler for editors, which of course means that things get tagged correctly, which helps everybody. So you can see some of the nuts and bolts are really starting to work there, but of course the real test here is, okay, does it actually work? And of course it does. So here's an example of a page that's rendered out to the actual website. Of course we're a mobile first platform, so this is actually the important view, is what does it look like on my mobile phone? And you can see here that we've got everything going full width, using all the sort of latest standards effectively for what a mobile rendered browsed website should look like. Scrolls itself very nicely, some really good presentations there, obviously all under the control of editors, which means that whilst it will come preloaded with content and new content will flow through, all of this is under control of each support office to change as they wish to. And of course it also works across the different sizes of screen if you want a tablet, or as you get larger if you move on to a desktop type presentation. So as we move through this, we're going to be tweaking a lot of this design. You see at the moment there's a lot of space there, and we need to tighten that up as we get into the sort of editorial phases, and we're working with editors to understand what are the kinds of content they're going to be loading. Obviously we get a much better idea of how these visual elements need to interact with each other. But the design framework that Helmut introduced back in our first webinar is used throughout, so it keeps everything really consistent and helps us to really make sure that users don't get confused by things, make sure that they're getting what they need really quickly and simply, and basically engaging with our cause, engaging with our children as effectively as possible. So there you go, that's all I'm going to give you for now. Hopefully that's been a useful sneak peek and sort of a kind of so far so good. Nothing too dramatic there just now. At the moment what we're doing is really building out all of the core features that we expect, making sure that they work very, very quickly. So now we've got the site up and running, we're going to start work on speed optimization, on browser optimization, to make sure that it works correctly across all of the browsers that might crop up on the internet. And that's going to be really the work that we'll focus on over the coming several sprints as we run through to the end of this financial year in September, and begin to prepare for the launch of our cohort 1 customers from October onwards. So that's all I want to share about that so far. I'm very happy to share more. By the time we get to our next webinar, we will obviously be a little bit further down the line there. And we'll be doing a full demo when we do get that sort of first site ready for launch. So in terms of the content that I wanted to sort of make sure that we'd shared with you, that was really it today, keeping it a relatively light webinar. I know we're starting to get into holiday season. I don't know whether there are any questions that have sort of sprung to mind as you look through. I see some comments there. Thank you for those comments. Yes, great to see some of the demos coming forward. You'll see much more of that when we next demo when we next demo the platform. At the moment, because of it being an international platform, and because we're going for a completely clean slate, we're not reusing any of the technology from World Vision United 3, it does mean that we have some sort of digging of foundations to do, again, if you like, where we're implementing payment providers behind the scene, which is, not very exciting to look at, but obviously absolutely vital to work with. And we can use the learnings from United 3 in terms of which payment providers work best with users and how to integrate with them to make sure that we get through that as speedily as possible. I know there is a delay between me talking and you sort of seeing what I'm saying, so that's why I'm sort of filling time for a moment to see whether there are any questions coming through on the chat, but I don't see any coming through. And I think actually we did clear down the questions that we had around the last webinar. We did get to the end of those. So Helmut, from your perspective, was there anything else that you wanted to add to today's webinar?
Maybe just regarding the CMS editor experience. I've built lots of pages with World Vision United 3, which was based on Drupal, and now I built a couple of pages with Umbraco, and I'm really amazed how easy and fast it is to create a page. So if you have your content lined up, it's really a matter of 5 to 10 minutes to create a page. Only if you need to source your content first, of course, choosing images and writing copy and stuff that takes as much time as it did with Drupal. But just from a simplistic point of view of how to create a page, I'm really amazed. So for all of you who are working on United 3 right now, you can really look forward to upgrading and having a much simpler editor experience than you have now. So it's really fun for me, and I guess you can look forward to start using it as well. It's just my 2 cents on the CMS experience.
That's such an important point, Helmut. We've I don't think we talked about this too much on the webinar, but because we have a lot of editors in different countries, many using an editor experience that they don't actually use particularly often because it's part of a much bigger job. We've really focused on 2 areas. Firstly, making the editorial experience as seamless as possible, as straightforward, almost intuitive, if something as complex as that can be intuitive as possible. But really, as Helmut said, we want to make the hard part the thinking about content, which of course is always the hard part of thinking, well, how do I produce a piece of content that's going to achieve the result I need? Obviously we're helping with that by providing a lot of content in United, but that's always going to be the tricky part. But in terms of the editorial experience, we're aiming as much as possible to make it very much click through the screen, it tells you what it needs to do, and away it goes. I've had the same experience myself. I used a lot of content management systems over the years, built a few back in the day, before that was a thing. You can tell how old I am from that. And this is a good one. I mean, Drupal's a good one too, but it's really about how you set them up, keeping them simple, and we've really tried to do that. But we've also tried to, and you won't have seen any of this in the demo, some of this is work that we're just doing at the moment, but we've also tried to make the system as helpful as possible to editors. So, one of the things that's a real pain, for example, on a content management system is if you have to crop images in loads of different ways to make sure that they display differently in different setups. So we're using some really powerful features within Umbraco that we're just working through at the moment to actually have the system itself handle all of that. So you can just upload a single high-res version of the image. You can tell the system that's the piece that always needs to be visible, which isn't always the middle. Sometimes there's a center of vision off to one side, and that's the person's face that you always want to be visible. And then the system is going to make some great choices around how it crops based on the different screen sizes that it has to render at. And that's useful because some of our content lives around for a long time. Some of our images, our fantastic images, get reused across a variety of different places. And we don't want to have to come and do a new crop of an image just because we've reused it if it's already in the system. So we've put in place that kind of tool, and we're looking at other tools which will really help us as editors to make sure we write good SEO copy, make sure that our main copy is compelling and contains the right kind of sort of complexity of language and length of sentences, length of paragraphs. That's something that we're looking at for a little bit further down the line. So yeah, it's all about making it as easy as possible for us to communicate with our supporters and connect them with the cause that they care about. So hopefully you'll see that come to life. So I don't see any more questions, which is fantastic. Thank you for the pleasant comments in the chat. So let's wrap it up there. We'll have a little bit of time back in our diaries. What we'll do is we're getting into holiday time. I see the webinar's a little bit quieter today already. I know several of my colleagues are sort of grabbing a little bit of holiday at the moment. So as we get into August, obviously that really ramps up. So we're not going to do a webinar in August, partly because of holidays and partly because of a lot of what we're doing being behind the scenes, and we want to let the editors do their bit so that we can show you the results of all that work a little bit further down the line. So we're going to pick up the webinar schedule again in September. That'll be on September the 24th, same time, same place. And at that point, we will be obviously 2 months further down the line. We'll have quite a bit more functionality delivered by that point. So what we're working on right now, for example, is all the payment flows, which are absolutely vital parts of the site. And of course, we'll also have a lot more content loaded up and a lot more optimization around how that content looks and reads, and also the technical delivery. So we'll be able to actually start to do some benchmarking. So it's going to be quite a big webinar then. We're going to have a sort of big sort of show and tell. Here's what it is, here's how it works, here's how it looks. And you'll be able to then come and have a poke around afterwards, because we'll have the site up and running for you to basically poke with a stick and see what you think. And in the meantime, of course, you've got the product plan tool, which we shared the link in the chat. That's there for you to go and have a look at. We'll also reference that back on the community hub so that you've always got a link back to that. So if you think of an idea, throw it on there. If you're wondering, oh, have you thought of X, you can find out whether we've got as far as writing it down. and if we haven't, we'd love your help to get that all done. So very much look forward to welcoming you back at the next webinar on the 24th of September. We will send around an invite as we normally do if you're already on our mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, do hop over to the community hub and sign up for updates, and that means you'll get a personal invite with a link to your calendar, so you can hopefully click through that and come find us very easily on the 24th. Very much hope that you can join us then. And in the meantime, have a lovely summer holiday, stay safe, and hope your family stay safe. And yeah, look forward to the 24th of September. Till then.